Welcome to the Foundry by Forge College. I'm so glad you're joining us today. Look, if you've been trying to figure out how decentralized finance protocols actually wire together under the hood, well, you're in the exact right place. Today's explainer is literally an engineering blueprint for DeFi. We're going to break down exactly how to design cross-program invocation flows, specifically focusing on lending and yield. You can think of this as your master schematic for getting complex smart contracts to talk to each other safely, efficiently, and completely automatically. So let's roll up our sleeves and dive right in. Now, if you were with us for the previous lesson, you'll probably remember we spent a good chunk of time designing multi-sig wallet architectures, right? That was all about getting multiple human users, or key holders, to agree on an action. But today, we're scaling things up. Big time. We're moving away from human coordination and straight into inter-program architecture. We need to figure out exactly how these autonomous programs can safely talk to each other on the blockchain without losing a single token in the process. It's an absolute game changer. Here's our factory schematic for today's explainer. We've got 5 sections. Section 1, the CPI conveyor belt. Section 2, who holds the keys? Section 3, the golden rule, atomicity. Section 4, deposit and borrow flow. And finally, Section 5, designing your next blueprint. Section 1, the CPI conveyor belt, building the factory floor. All right, I want you to use your imagination for a second. Step onto the abstract factory floor of the Solana runtime. It's bustling, it's highly coordinated, but to make it all work, we absolutely need a reliable transportation system. So let's define our core component first, the cross-program invocation, or CPI for short. In plain English, a CPI is just a Solana program calling another program's instruction. But here is the crucial point, the real magic of this whole thing. It executes entirely within a single transaction and a single runtime. It's not like sending a text message and waiting around for a reply, right? It's an immediate, synchronous handoff. Now, as you can probably imagine, tracking all these synchronous program handoffs, account validations, and token transfers, well, it can get incredibly complicated. So how do we visualize CPI flows without our brains just melting into a puddle? Because let's be honest, staring at raw code to try and understand system architecture is kind of like staring at individual bricks to understand a skyscraper. It doesn't really work. To save our sanity, we're going to use what I call the escrow conveyor belt analogy. Picture this beautifully simple mechanical system. The conveyor belt itself, that represents our single transaction runtime constantly moving forward. Riding on this belt are our parcels. These are your valuable tokens and your state changes. Now, along the belt, we have gates, and these represent the different programs we're invoking. And finally, to actually open those gates, we need gate keys, which in our world are the signers or program-derived addresses, better known as PDAs. If you can understand this mechanical factory, you understand CPIs. Section 2. Who holds the keys? Managing conveyor gate access. So in our factory, you can't just walk up to a gate and jimmy the lock. We need incredibly strict security. Picture a massive warning sign on the factory floor saying pre-flight check. Solana strictly demands that every single account requirement, whether it needs to be a signer, whether it needs to be writable, exactly who owns it, all of that must be declared and validated before the transaction even begins. You can't just sneak new keys in later while the belt is already moving. You have to tell the runtime exactly which gates you plan to open before you ever push the start button. So what kind of keys can we actually use? Well, this engineering table breaks down the trade-offs brilliantly. If you use an external signer, say a user manually clicking approve in their wallet, your safety is high, but your automation is completely bottlenecked. On the flip side, if you use PDA authority, where the program mathematically signs for itself, your automation is super high, but it introduces medium to high complexity with things like rent and seed management. Finally, SPL approvals sit right in the middle. They allow some automation, but carry a bit of risk if those temporary approvals linger open for too long. As the architect, it's totally on you to choose the right key for the right gate. Section 3. The golden rule. Atomicity. When the belt suddenly stops. Okay, so what happens when the machinery jams? Look at the stark contrast here. On the left, we have the beautiful, elegant safety of atomicity. Because a CPI happens in a single transaction, it's completely all or nothing. If gate 3 fails to open for some reason, the runtime just hits the emergency stop and reverts the entire conveyor belt back to zero. Literally nothing is lost. But on the right side, if you split your flow across multiple transactions, you're now relying on idempotency. This means you have to manually build on-chain receipts, check statuses, and reconcile states if the belt stops halfway through. Let me tell you, it is vastly more complicated. Oh, and one more mechanical detail before we start building our machine. Our parcels can't just sit directly on the belt. They actually need pallets. In Solana, these pallets are accounts, and they cost rent in the form of lamports. You have to pre-compute these costs, ensure any account creation instructions happen super early in your flow, and ideally, try to reuse existing pallets whenever possible. That saves overhead and keeps the whole line moving nice and quickly. Section 4. Deposit and borrow flow, a real-world schematic. All right, we've gathered all our parts. Let's actually apply this factory theory and design a deposit and borrow flow totally from scratch. Imagine a user wants to deposit tokens into a lending protocol and immediately borrow yield against that collateral. Here's the exact chronological sequence to do it safely in one fluid motion. Step 1, we create or initialize the user's auxiliary vault if it doesn't already exist. Step 2, we get the transfer approval. Step 3, the integration program executes the SPL token transfer right into the protocol's deposit vault. Step 4, we issue the lending deposit CPI, which credits the collateral. And finally, Step 5, the borrowing module checks that collateral and issues the loan tokens via another CPI. Boom! All gates open, the parcel goes all the way through, perfectly synchronized. Listen, if you remember absolutely nothing else from today, burn this quote into your brain. Keep token movement and state changes inside the exact same transaction whenever feasible. This is the absolute golden rule of CPI design. When you bundle the token transfer and the ledger update together, you guarantee that beautiful atomicity we talked about. No stuck funds, no lingering permissions. The whole shebang either succeeds entirely or it cleanly rolls back. Section 5, designing your next blueprint, from schematic to code. We've looked at the schematic, but now it's time to prepare you to draft your own. As you step into the role of integration architect, you really need to lean on these core principles. First, always push for single transaction CPIs. Second, be incredibly explicit about whether you're using a PDA or an external authority. Third, if you are forced to go off-chain or multi-transaction, plan your durable receipts meticulously. And lastly, always map your accounts and their owners upfront. By the way, these exact rigorous standards are a core part of what we teach in Forge College's advanced learning programs. We want to ensure you don't just build code that kind of works, but code that is totally impenetrable. And hey, this isn't just theory. The incredibly detailed blueprint we just reviewed together is going to be put to work immediately. Next up, we're going to use this exact schematic to write concrete transaction assembly code, implementing a real lending integration with an SDK. You'll get to see exactly how these drawings translate directly into Rust and TypeScript. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If your protocol's conveyor belt suddenly reversed due to an error, would your tokens survive the rollback? Or would they be stuck somewhere on the factory floor? Designing secure CPIs is really what separates the novices from the master architects. I highly encourage you to visit forge.college to explore more about this subject, dive into our diverse Web3 engineering resources, and continue mastering your craft. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you on the factory floor next time.